Let's talk about 3A now. Andrean, Bishop Luers, we got word earlier today that this game has actually been moved to Saturday. So they're going to be playing at Luers Field at 6 o'clock on Saturday to allow some of the travel to work itself out.
Right, yeah.
It's getting
the
pretty
rumors
nasty.
that game day is going to be there are not true, by the way.
No, Reese Davis?
Saturday. No,
Chris
Lee
Fowler,
Corso
all those guys.
putting on the Knights hat.
Well, I would put on the Knights hat.
I would.
I would put on the Knights hat considering they've really been tested. Concordia earlier in the playoffs, they were down early. They answered the bell. Yorktown, I didn't know at 19-0. I didn't know that they had it in them to answer it. But that's just a testament to what Bishop Luers has been able to do because Yorktown's a better football team, I think, than we thought going in. So in this game, Andrean is undefeated. You're talking about a number one team. They've got revenge on their mind from a couple of years ago against this Luers program. So what are some of the big keys you think on Saturday night?
Yeah, Saturday night. You know, Luers just has, we've been saying it all year, they got to come out and just play 4 quarters of football. You know, as good as Yorktown was in the first half of that game Friday, Luers handed them a lot. I mean, that defense just came out and just got blitzed early. Riley Neal running and passing all over the place. Turnovers, penalties. I mean, we've seen that earlier this year out of Luers, and they can't do it Fridays. You can fall behind 19-0 to Yorktown and have a shot. If you fall down 19-0 to Andrean, it's over. I mean, the top-ranked team in the state, 28 straight wins. Andrean is not going to let you come back from a 19-point deficit. They need to show up from the first snap on Friday night or Saturday night.
Yeah, and the thing that would scare me is that Andrean played Jimtown last week. Jimtown is a heck of a football program year in and year out. They were up 31-0 on them. I mean, they came out of the gate and beat up on Jimtown, much like Yorktown did to Luers. But like you said, Andrean has more firepower, more experience, used to being able to play this late in the playoffs. You're just not going to be able to do that against the 59ers.
No, definitely. Their team only giving up 12 points a game this year. They got Josh Barajas, outside linebacker, that's committed to Notre Dame. A really solid linebacker core there, led by Barajas. And this is a team in Andrean that is going to be, in terms of 3A teams, the closest to be able to match up to Luers athletically on the field. You know, Terrell Johnson goes out Friday night last week. Really don't know his status as of yet for Luers. Hopefully he's able to play for the Knights. If he doesn't, that's a big loss for them in terms of a guy that can really make plays. So it's a defense in Andrean that's really going to be able to maybe not match up entirely with that offense, but it's going to come the closest as any team that Luers has faced in playoffs thus far.
You mentioned Riley Neal, which brings me to the quarterback they're going to be facing this week, Jake Paliga. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. 208 yards passing last week, over 100 yards rushing. Pretty good balance. That's kind of the numbers that we saw with Riley Neal. So a quarterback that can run, a quarterback with some talent. That was obviously problematic last week.
Right.
If you're Kyle Lindsey, you say, this guy looks a little bit like Riley Neal. How do we stop him knowing that we face a quarterback similar to him?
Yeah, I think at least you faced a guy like Riley Neal last week. But you also look at it and you say, I don't really know if Luers really stopped Riley Neal last week as much as maybe pressured him a little bit more and got a little more inaccurate as the game went on, and obviously putting up points and got him ahead. Now you face, the Andrean quarterback, and they got Trevor Berg, a running back who's got some gaudy numbers. So it's not just a one-dimensional attack in that backfield. So it goes back to Luers, from the first snap Saturday night. They have to be ready to play defensively, especially because they really were completely lost Friday night. Early against Yorktown, both in the run and the pass, and you can't do that. If you do that against Andrean, you're not going to Indy.
Fumbles were an issue.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that's not an issue? Because they had 4 fumbles in the first half.
Yeah.
And I believe they lost 3 of them, if my math is correct.
Yeah. And that's something that I think Kyle Lindsey's kind of been dealing with all year. The turnovers and the penalties. I mean, you look at the roster. It's a really young team. A lot of their playmakers are juniors and under. So maybe a little inexperience. I mean, this is the first time. Last year they go winless in the regular season with that group as sophomores. Obviously didn't play much as freshmen. So this is still a reasonably young team with a lot of juniors. But juniors are not. They got to hold on to the football. Can't turn it over. Austin Mack can't fumble. They got to protect the football, especially against the top-ranked team in 3A.
Final question: what's going to tip the scale Saturday night at Luers Field? I
think the combination of Wazinski, who I think has been underrated, especially late in the season in the playoffs, just how accurate he has been. He's not a runner. I mean, he's a similar passer to Riley Neal. Riley Neal has that added dimension of being able to run the football a little bit. Wazinski is a pure pocket passer, can move if he needs to, but he's not going to take off and beat you with his legs consistently. But I think the key is protecting Wazinski, allow him to do what he has done, and they have to be zeroed in the passing game. Mack needs to have a big game. Hopefully Terrell Johnson can play, and those guys, and Justin Dippold, I think, has been an underrated guy for them as well. So those guys really need to come to play on Saturday night.
All right, should be very interesting on Saturday.